Album
All right.
number 3.
All right, so we're going to go do some Permanent Waves with Rush, which comes in at number 90 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums, number 9 in 1980, number 594 of all time. So this cracks our top 100 in Best Ever Albums, but it is not in Rolling Stone's list. And I'm going first on this, and I really like this album. I don't think I liked it as much as 2112. I think the high moments on 2112, particularly with that song, are better than anything on this record. But overall, I did like this. It's interesting because they seem to have most of the songs on here are within a reasonable amount of time, so you're not dealing with any 20-minute or 15-minute long songs.
Right.
You got a 750 with Jacob's Ladder and 927 with Natural Science, which actually might be my 2 favorite songs on this because I do like the progressive nature of the band. I like them changing up the time signatures. I like them kind of really exploring the instruments a little bit more and really showing that off because that's certainly their biggest talent. Is just how that every one of them is a virtuoso musician. So I really did like that. It's got 2 of the singles on here, like Spirit of Radio and Free Will are pretty songs I knew.
Recognized.
Yeah, exactly. So those are ones that would have made the radio or just would have made a greatest hits record or whatever. So that's great. Geddy Lee's sounds. I mean, he's got the quintessential Geddy Lee voice. It's I could see people hating it. I like it. I think it fits well, and it's pretty impressive what he does with his voice in places. I will say this is one of those albums that the lyrics, even not being a lyrics person, the lyrics do stand out as being not all that great. And it kind of
it's got a Ayn Randian view of the world would be what I would say is the theme.
It's not even that. I'm not even like throwing my politics or Neil Peart's politics into this. It's just like I could just tell like some of the words they're putting together. It's just like that just doesn't sound great. And in particular, like the one song I didn't like on here, the one clunker was Different Strings. Rush doesn't need to do acoustic kind of introspective ballads. That's not why I want to listen to Rush. And I think the first thing talks right off the bat talking about a dragon, and I could just be like, oh, I'm sure John's loving this right now, like some kind of thing there.
I always heard this was their science album is how when I learned
Natural
about
Science
Rush,
is one of the
yeah, they would always say, like, it was always Rush had like themes for their albums, right? And Permanent Waves, and I felt like the most successful theme was like Subdivisions because it actually was probably the strongest album in terms of my interest in their writing, and I'm like, all right, well, they make some good points right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Permanent Waves was supposedly the science album.
Science album.
I never really picked up on that, I'll be honest. I listened to this album with that supposedly influencing it, and I didn't get that vibe.
Well, I mean, the last track is Natural Science, in 3 different, movements, I guess. But I don't know. It is whatever. It's fine. But so I think the first half is probably the strongest half of this. I like the first, it's the first 3 songs. Jacob's Ladder, like I said, I think that is my favorite song. That's got some of the best guitar moments and just cool, like I said, cool time signatures. And Neil Peart's drumming is crazy. So I think I really, between this and 2112, I think I really do like Rush. I'm not going to be a Rush, aficionado or like, someone that's just going to be one of those over the moon for Rush, fans or whatever. But I definitely appreciate them, and I did like this record overall. I would just say do without Different Strings. Entre Nous was okay. It's probably my second least favorite song on that, but I felt that had more bite, that had a little bit more going on than Different Strings. But overall, there's some cool stuff going on in here, and I'm going to go with a thumbs up here.
Yeah, this is more my style of Rush. It's interesting because we did 2112, which I can appreciate from a musical standpoint, but it just was a very cold album, and I think even the review I did, I never was able to find an input for me. It just didn't connect with me, and never really has. Now, we didn't cover Hemispheres, which is after this, which actually I like better than both of the Rush albums that we've covered. I think it's a really strong album. But I like Permanent Waves as well. I mean, as Matt mentioned, there's 2 tracks that pretty much anybody who knows Rush would know right off the bat, and they're extremely good songs. They take the best qualities of prog rock, and they somehow take those best qualities and put them into like palatable time packages. I don't get scared off by the length of Rush's songs necessarily, but there are some songs where I think they didn't need to go as long as they did. They would be better off spreading it out a little bit. I think they get better at that as time goes on, kind of stretching stuff out into concepts. Like, I know Natural Science is 3 concepts, right? It's tide pools, hyperspace, and permanent waves, and that's where the permanent waves name comes from. I remembered, in my reading that was there. But I do like Jacob's Ladder. It's a song that rewards re-listening, which I was reminded of this week, because the first time I listened to it, there's a lot going on, and I remember bookmarking it and saying, okay, I got to come back to this, because there's parts of this I want to delve into while I'm listening. It's a very, much like the concept of Jacob's Ladder, right? It's a very, which, by the way, Josh, I know you're a movie guy. A great movie, by the way, Jacob's Ladder from back in the day. Yeah. It definitely sounds like what you would imagine a song called Jacob's Ladder is about. It's really dark, and it kind of it runs scales, and it's just a really complex musical concept. I'm not doing a great job of going into the technical nature of it, but it's an interesting mix of what Rush does well in terms of being showy on their instruments, but there's also a repetitiveness to it, like that reminds me of sort of like the krautrock concept, which is not something I associate with Rush very often. And it sounds like someone climbing a ladder, which I always... Rush is good at that. They even though I don't love their lyrics, like, you see what their tracks are called and the concept, and they can make their tracks... Like, Natural Science sounds sort of like waves and nature, right? And Jacob's Ladder sort of sounds like you're scaling a ladder. And, the Ayn Randian stuff, as much as I am not an Ayn Rand fan, like, in the least, a lot of it is about, like, breaking through, sort of, having these epiphany moments, right, where you're the individual kind of doing it. And, a song like Free Will has that sort of sound to it, like the I will choose free will, and then it kind of like, it's almost like you're bursting through a tunnel, right, which is kind of the idea of that. And I always appreciate that Rush, I go back to, we're not going to cover this album, so I'll bring it up, like, in Subdivisions, if you know the song Subdivisions, it's heavy synth, right, and it's supposed to be like sort of this ominous view of, like, the conformity of the subdivision, and it sounds like that, you know what I mean? It sounds like this creeping conformity on album, and so I appreciate that Rush has a real skill with that, and I like this one better than 2112. This one's a thumbs up for me. As always with Rush, I have to put aside the fact that the lyrics do nothing for me. Geddy Lee does not bother me at all. As a singer, I actually think he works really well with the bombast of Neil Peart's drums and sort of Alex Lifeson's. Alex Lifeson's a very interesting guitarist in the context of the band, isn't he, guys? You would say, because Geddy Lee's got a really showy voice and bass style, and Neil Peart certainly has a very showy drum style, and Lifeson's kind of the guy. He reminds me a little bit of in The Police. You know what I mean? You've got, like, it's a sort of a similar concept that Stuart Copeland's a drummer that stands out, and you got Sting doing, like, very, at times, forefront bass stuff, and then
but then Andy Summers is like,
and then Andy Summers kind of is like the soul of the band, like the heartbeat, and I feel very much the same with Rush.
Yeah, he takes kind of like a backseat a little bit, but he's still, if you listen to his guitar playing, it's
there's tasty guitar parts all over, man. That's the thing. It's like he's certainly not a lesser, but his role within the band, as he kind of congeals everything together. And so and they're both 3 pieces, so it makes sense.
And just to clean this stack, so Hemispheres actually came out before this, John. It was
that's what I said, didn't I?
You said it came after it, but it's
well, Subdivisions is after, and Hemispheres is
Hemispheres was 78, and that's actually ranked higher on Best Ever Albums. I forgot to mention Permanent Waves is their 4th highest rated album, and Moving Pictures is their highest, and we're going to cover that. But Hemispheres is 3, and that was 70s, and we didn't cover that. So
in my brain I said it's beforehand because I 100% know it is. I'm sorry if I misspoke. I think it's because I was thinking of Hemispheres and Subdivisions in terms of what I wanted to say about the album, but this is literally wedged in between those two.
I like this album as well. I I feel like you guys kind of said everything I was going to say, but the front half, I feel like Spirit of Radio and Free Will, which are the two songs I knew, those are great songs. I kind of appreciate the complexity of what they're trying to do in the shortened time frame. I really like Jacob's Ladder as well. It kind of has this like dark, ominous like metal sound to it at times. But then it takes like a synth break, and then it's like instrumental. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like really unique and easy to understand. Like, it's, a lot of the prog rock that we've listened to was like overly complex for me when we were kind of in the heyday of prog rock, and I feel like this is more palatable in some sense. Rush has this kind of, I don't know, epic quality to their songs in a way. They're really larger than life. I think that's what a lot of people respond to. And like you said, each of the members of the band brings a certain sort of energy to their music or to their instrument and to their I don't know, what the band is trying to accomplish. John said the lyrics don't do much, but I think they're trying to reach for something on a big level, like these big kind of like Free Will. That's a big concept, right?
Well, Entre Nous, Jacob's Ladder, biblical. There's like all of these huge concepts. Yeah. Natural science, the concept of science. Yeah.
So they really bring. I don't know enough about the band to know what comes first, the music or the lyrics, or it's a combination of work in progress. But they seem to rise to the level of their music takes on this like quality that matches what they're trying to do with their lyrics.
Well, Neil Peart writes the lyrics by himself, and then the other two write the music. So I think that they do them separately, and then they just come together and somehow put it all together. So it's not like it's just two separate ideas coming together.
Yeah.
Forcing it together, I guess.
He layers the drums at the end, although you can't really call what Neil Peart does layering, can you? He kind of just explodes. Yeah.
Yeah. Spirit of Radio also has this kind of interesting reggae thing at the end that they do. So they definitely kind of experiment, and I appreciate Rush because they're uniquely themselves. And I think that's what I'm finding, and compared to REO Speedwagon, I like bands that feel like uniquely them, or that they have a point of view, or that they their personality comes through in the album. I feel like when a band doesn't accomplish that, that's kind of when it loses me. And I'm trying to
Can I ask you a question, Josh?
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering this, because I think this might appeal. My guess, I don't want to assume, is this might apply to you more than it might to Matt and I. Do you feel like you have to see something of yourself in the artists that you like connect to some degree? Because like REO Speedwagon is definitively not you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And nor is Pat Benatar, right? Whereas like Rush, even though you're not in love with this album, right? They have a sort of a spirit and like a vibe, right? That I think lines up more with like who you are as a person, right? Do you feel like to some degree you need that a little bit to connect with somebody, or no?
No, I don't think so, because I never really I definitely don't think of myself as a musician or an artist, so I never kind of like put myself in the band or try to identify with them in that way. I just feel like when it comes to the music, it's always kind of more of a gut thing for me, and how, if what they're doing, I don't know. We've listened to so many albums over the years, like, is the music different in some way? Is it something I haven't heard before? I think that always sets the tone. If it's I don't know, when you get energized by it too, when you think of something like Van Halen or Guns N' Roses or something like that, or even like the White Stripes, they're not necessarily, reinventing the wheel or doing something like Miles Davis, but they bring an energy and a intensity to it that I respond to. I think that's why I like metal too, or punk rock, or rap. I don't think but the personality aspect never really comes into play for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd ask just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Rush, we have always said, is kind of like technical. They're like little technical wizard type of artists. So I think I appreciate them on that level too. They're always complex in a way that's not off-putting for whatever reason. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying too, John. I think the first couple songs in particular, it's got like more of a, I don't want to say it's poppy, but it's got a lighter sound to it. It's got a more maybe inviting in that regard. So like you said that 2112 was a little bit cold, but it kind of starts off with those first couple of songs where it's more, it's a little bit more traditional, and it's got like a lighter, poppier feel to it. I wouldn't call them, they're not pop songs necessarily, but I think there's a reason why they would be songs that they would be a little bit more known for or played on the radio a little bit more. So
yeah, and it's, I think they gigged a lot more too, and they famously opened for like Kiss, and different bands, and so I think it was a little bit more. I don't know if Rush ever wanted to be famous, but I think most bands, no matter how much they try to pretend, there's an element of them that wants to be heard by kind of the largest audience possible without them feeling uncomfortable. And there comes a point, I think, where probably you want to be heard by a not insignificant amount of people. And this does have a feel of a band that is a little bit more comfortable chasing commercial acclaim, I would say. I mean, they're going to be unapologetically Rush because they're just not built to be matinee idols, right? That's not who they, and that's not what their fan base wants. But this is definitely the sound of a band who is reaching for something a little bigger.
Yep. And it sounds like they're using more of the keyboards. Is this where the keyboards start making their appearance for Rush? Because that wasn't something that they did before. Is this,
and then by the time like Subdivisions comes, it's like all kinds of
keyboards.
All
right, so I need to clean the stack because the Rush fans are going to kill us, John. Subdivisions is not a Rush album; it's a song on the album Signals.
Signals. Okay. I'm sorry.
Oh,
so I always think of that. Yeah, I always think of that as the album.
I might have to cut that in earlier so we don't get berated.
Rush fans are already angry at me for not saying 2112. It's funny because I like Rush. In fact, I was the guy that sang the praises to you guys, but I do think there's like a weird fanaticism. I think it's because. And if you're listening to this and this applies to you, please know that I'm not knocking you. It's more just what I've noticed. I think that Rush has this bond with their fans where they put themselves in the guys in Rush as like the optimum versions of what their pop culture and music is supposed to sound. There's just this deep personal connection to Rush. They're almost like avatars for coming out of like a certain way of being in your teenage years, kind of, and becoming an adult. Like, I don't know how to describe, you know what I mean? But they're the living embodiment for a lot of people, I think, of like an artistic spirit. And, it's kind of like, to some degree, they're like Pink Floyd, in that the people that listen to them and connect to them in their teen years just maintain this relationship with them that transcends like, I love this album, and goes into like, I like everything about this band. They represent all the pieces of me, musically, personality wise. And there is because there's that intensity, there is a little barrier for me with Rush sometimes where it's like, listen, I like this as much as anybody, but not as much as anybody.
No, you don't.
I was about to say, I like maybe that's what it is. I like this, but I don't think, you can't say that even. We immediately both recognized that, didn't we, Matt? Because it's like, I could easily say, I like Led Zeppelin as much as anybody without fear of people saying, no, you don't. Like, you don't get, like, Getty singing directly.
But I think that's okay, though. I like that there's bands like this out there. I think it's cool that you've got like this ridiculous cult following that didn't get a whole lot of commercial success in the traditional sense of it, and that it's like, because of that, if Rush was more popular and sold more and was like more well known, then that fan base couldn't really exist that way. Can I even think that this is probably more of a passionate fan base than, I don't know, maybe than Pink Floyd even. Like, there's something like the cult nature of this, really kind of takes it to that level, I think. And I'm with you, John. I like them plenty, but I don't like them nearly as much as like Rush fans like Rush. Like it's. I'm glad that we're covering them. I can't wait to do. We're doing moving pictures, I think, and that's probably the last one, if I'm not mistaken. But I like.
That's what we do.
Yeah, they're a very interesting band, and they hit on a lot of elements of music that I like. but it doesn't get me to. I haven't been to the next level yet as a whole, but there's plenty of pieces here that keeps me interested. So I'm thumbs up.
Can
Guys,
you be
we're
a
covering
cult band?
Signals as well, I think.
Oh,
Are
okay,
we?
good.
That's from '82.
No, we're not. Sorry.
Okay.
And that's 264 in the 1980s.
I interpreted the spreadsheet wrong. Sorry.
Oh.
And can you be a cult band when you've sold as many albums as Rush has? Because it's not like they
I mean,
didn't
cult
sell
in the
albums.
sense, cult in the sense that they didn't really get a ton of like top 40 radio play or MTV rotation, or like, you know, they never got to that. They didn't seem to get to that notoriety. Album sales is different because you could talk about that with, you know, metal sells really well. You always talk about that, but it's not like that they're on the radio and, you know, like just a Joe Schmo walking down the street that doesn't really pay attention to a whole lot, probably, you know, doesn't know a ton of Rush. You know, maybe Tom Sawyer is the one that probably, if you're going to know a Rush song, you're going to know that. But even these songs on here, like Spirit of Radio, I mean, how well known is that song amongst the general public?
It hit 51 on the U.S. Hot 100, so yeah, it certainly wasn't a hit. It's always a tough thing for me. It's kind of like, is Iron Maiden a cult band? Because you know, they sold a ton, but they, you know, didn't necessarily cross into like mainstream radio. But like each of their albums sold like 1 million copies. So what constitutes a true cult band?
Yeah, or dare I say a band like, you know, Fish, which doesn't sell a ton of albums, but like has a rabid like concert, you know, live performance following. You know, like,
well, to me,
like,
that's
like
a cult
Dead.
band. Yeah, that's a cult band because.
But it's
So,
anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Good questions all abound. But yeah, I think everybody was pretty much thumbs up on this one, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And where do we stand since we've done 2112 in this one? I think Matt has said that he liked 2112 a little better.
I think yeah, probably just because I like 2112 so much, that song itself. Yeah.
And I like this one better than I like 2112. So I'm Permanent Waves put me in favor of that one.
Yeah, I think I like 2112 more, but I don't remember too much about it, honestly.
It's kick-ass, Josh, is what it is.
Sometimes
That's what
Josh
you
is
need to know
too
about.
honest, you know what I mean? Because just so